Let's start. Good morning. Welcome to our session on the global democratization of work forum. And I'm really excited to be here. It's great to have Jack Vos and Molenaar with us. My name is Björn. I'll be the chair of this panel session. And it's really great to have Jack and Constant here, because the whole democratization of work movement seems to be a lot about academic research. But today we are talking to two practitioners who have actually implemented democratization of work in their organizations. I'm not sure if they called it democratization when they started with it. Probably not. I think it must be something like manager-less working or working without managers. So what our session today will be about. Jack and Constant will first, they will share their stories, their experiences. Jack will share a presentation with us. Constant will tell his stories from the head. And afterwards we will have the conversation together about what made it work, what were the experiences, what were the challenges we were facing, and what were the big learnings, and how successful were the initiatives in the end. So again, my name is Björn. Normally I'm the owner of a consulting firm, change management consulting firm, and our mission is to connect the talents and power of people within organizations to build a better future. And that resonates with me to the democratization movement we are working in, and we're all together here right now. So first of all, Jack, please introduce yourself and then take the floor. It's yours for 15 minutes now.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Björn. Well, my name is Jack Vos. I've been an entrepreneur for about 20 years already. And I will tell you about how I managed to involve people in making decisions and by that democratize the workplace. And I will take you in my story within about 10 slides, and I will share my screen now with you. Let's see if it works.
It seems to work.
Yeah, you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this intro we can skip. And I will start with some definitions. Of course, democracy, it's from Greek. It means people's rule. That's a bit general. But if you look at a more specific democratic workplace, it's a definition I got from Cambridge University. You can all read it. But it seems to be going about everyone to be treated equally and to be involved in making decisions. And to democratize is how to do it. So as I told you, I will tell you how I did it in my company. And I will start with the first thing is how to involve people. And then I will go to the second part, how to make decisions, or better, of more important, how to determine where we should be taking decisions on. So I will take you back to the year of 2010. And then I went to a big congress. It was about a new leadership. From there was a keynote speaker. His name was Richard Barrett. I will tell him more about him later. And he said that if we are able to fulfill the needs of our employees, it will be the key to create a high-performing organization. It's kind of logical, because if people are happy, if they can do what they want, if their needs are fulfilled, then of course they will be highly engaged, and highly engaged people will create a high-performance organization. But of course, so many people, so many needs, and that's why Barrett based his work or his methodology on the work of Abraham Maslow. You all know him. He had the pyramid of needs. You can see it here. So people, they have basic needs. It's like physical needs, or eat, drink, etc. But they also have growth needs. They are at the upper part of the pyramid. And if you can fulfill these growth needs, then people will have long-lasting joy and will experience meaning in their life. And that's, of course, also very important. And nowadays we have also other needs, more basic needs, as you can see. But what Richard Barrett told me at that Congress, is that how can we find out what are the needs of our employees? Of course, we can ask them, Okay, and but it will be a lot of work. Suppose you have a company with 1,000 people. You have to do a lot of interviews. It will be a lot of work. And also very important, you will not get the answers you will want to hear, because if you ask people, what do you need? They will probably say, I will need more salary, more holiday, or something like that. So that's why Barrett found another way, a much more easy way to find out the needs of employees. He said, you just can ask what the values are of people, because if you know the value of people, then you know what they need. So if I say my value is quality, then you know this person needs something work that's to do with quality. And that's why Barrett, he like 25 years ago, he founded the Value Center. It's founded in the States and also in England. And he claimed a leading authority uh, how to improve company cultures by indeed democratizing work by the use of values. So his definition of a company culture is, as you can see, actually the sum of all values in a group of people that will define and guide the culture of people together. And this methodology of the value center is used by a lot of companies worldwide. Also the very big ones, they use it to define their culture and also to measure their culture and make it more taste more useful to practice and to develop their culture. So first I will tell you more a little bit more about values. I had some quotes about them, and I listed them here. So I already told you what we value is what we think is important, but values can also be the key in our conversations. If you know what values are important, we can more understand each other, and it can be our breakthroughs, or it can also be our next step in our culture or in our process of democratizing work. Last one is also very interesting. If you know what values a person has, it's not very hard to make decisions. To put it in other words, if you know what are the main or core values are in a group of people, we know what they find important, and we also know that these values will be taken into account for each decision of this group of people. Let's say one group of people thinks profit is very important, then their decision will be aligned on the way of profit. And if another group of people think sustainability is important, then their decisions will be aligned to sustainability, of course. So how can you know the values of a group of people? Now, that is why Barrett he invented a very simple way to find out. That's called a culture values assessment. It's an online survey. It only takes 10 minutes, and you can do it with all employees, or better, you should do it with all employees. So this survey consists only of 3 questions. So people will see a list of about 80 values on their screen, and then on the first question they will select 10 values that are important for them as an individual. We call that personal values. And that's where you can really engage or involve people, because it's about them. It's about what they think it's important for them in their lives. Second question will be, from the list again, select 10 values that indicates best how your organization works right now. And we call that the current culture. So it's about the east of the company. The third question, last question, is from the list again, select 10 values that, to your opinion, are needed for this organization to grow or to reach its maximum potential, of however you frame this question. So in a group of people, you need to have a consensus or agreement and a commitment about the core values. And with this culture value assessment, you can really easily find this consensus or agreement for the values. Now, another thing is that not all values we know are equal. That means that on the right, you can see a lot of values here. And what Barrett did is he told that each value aligns with a level of consciousness, as he calls it. And these levels, they also are based on the work of Maslow. It's on the right side. So there are levels which are really basic needs. I'm not going to mention them all, but and then also levels which are very more about growth needs and will cause meaning and give more long-lasting joy and purpose for an organization. So if you know the values of a person or you know the values of a group of people, then you can say something about the level of consciousness which they are on. And you know also how they can grow and develop together to a next level. And by measuring these values and showing them to the group of people which you did it for, then you can have a really good dialogue about it. And that's actually the main object of this whole culture value assessment, to start a dialogue about which values are important in this group of people, not only the individual values, but also the values which they see in this group and which they desire in this group. So I thought that this was a very interesting method, and I decided to start this culture value assessment in my own company in the year 2010. And I will share the result of this values assessment with you. This is only the short version of it because it gives a lot of more information, but this is the main information of this culture values assessment. So on the left, you can see the list of the 10 most selected values from the personal point of view. So actually, at that time, most people, 9 out of 20, selected quality. So these people was driven by quality. And luckily, they also find this value back. They found this value in our organization because it was also selected 11 times as a value for the current culture. So there you find a match between the individual and the company, which is good news. Because if there are no matches between individual values and current culture values, then it will be very challenging to motivate those people and to find a common ground. Also, they selected a lot of other current culture values like customer satisfaction, which was named 14 times out of 20, which I thought that was very good news to see that as a leader. But of course, positive values, but also they had wishes, they had desires to develop. And one of the most selected desired culture values was employee engagement. They find it apparently they find it very important to be more engaged, even more engaged in this company. So for them it was a next step, and before for me this was a not known need, but now became explicit. So together with the group, we all agreed that we would select 2 core values, and that would be customer satisfaction, because it was listed as one on the current culture, and a new value that would be employee engagement. So okay, that's very nice. If you agree on those 2 values, then you know in this direction as a group we should go, and we should turn these values into behavior. And of course, that's a bit can be a bit challenging. So after that, we decided that in these values we should define some more ambition. Yeah, should define an ambition, and also we should discuss about what behavior do we want to see within this value, within this group of people. And with that way, you can actually put values into action and make sure that values result in behavior. Now, of course, customer satisfaction, our ambition, it became we don't want customers, but we want to make real company friends. And this was an insurance company. So you can imagine it was a bit challenging. People, yeah, they went out with the behavior to make friends, and because I believed that as a result, they became loyal to our company, etc. Now, the behavior which you can expect within this ambition, make friends, is quite easy, because you just can compare your customer with your best friend, and you do the same behavior with everybody. So be honest always, treat people with respect, make it very personal, add some humor, etc. Now, this is a short version, of course, but for the time I will go to the next core value. It was about employee engagement, and we talked a lot about it, and in the end we decided that actually we don't want employees, but we want everybody to become a co-entrepreneur, meaning everybody would be equal, there will be no boss, no hierarchy, etc. And the behavior aligned with this value was that, okay, we give and we create a lot of trust and full autonomy needed not only to do your job, but also to take responsibility and act of the interest of the whole company, meaning we don't focus for short-term profit, but we go for long-term lasting relationships. Now, and also I have to mention that we decided that, okay, these are our core values, but we went for the principle of high trust and low tolerance. So if you make friends, you can do whatever you want. It's you can decide yourself which behavior you show. But if you make enemies, okay, then there will be a low tolerance. So there will be a good conversation with the leader. And that worked out really well. And I think if you don't take this principle seriously, it will result in the opposite, meaning low trust and high tolerance. And it's something you don't want. Now, this vision became our mission: happy cows give more milk. Meaning if our employees are happy, then it give results. I have one more slide, because after that I start using this methodology also in other companies, and it was not only small companies, but the companies which I used this methodology became bigger and bigger. And to my experience, that also works for very large groups, like if you have 1,000 people, it can still work. So I became a certified change agent for the Value Center, and I'm still doing this. And the company we do it for is called Zero Entropy, because entropy, I cannot explain it for time here, but it has something to do with the loss of energy in a company due to values which are really not positive. To finish, I learned from Richard Barrett that there is a difference between change and transformation. Change is doing things differently. It's only another behavior. But if you really want to make a transformation, then you have to shift to other values. You have to select as a group other values which are more successful in your new way of being. And I think this can use a lot if you want to decarbonize work.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Jack, for your sharing your story, sharing your way you've been democratizing work within your organization. Just one short question before we hand over the stage to Constant for a moment. What was your initial thought? Why did you start working on these value-based methodology within your own family-owned business? You were the owner of the business, eh? So
Yeah, that's
family-owned
right.
business.
Yeah.
Why do you start doing it?
Good question. Now, at that time, I was having a bit of a midlife crisis. Yeah, I was before I leaded the company in another way, more about my way or the highway, a bit more, yeah, hierarchy
Yeah, top down, so to
way,
say.
top down. But it ended up me having a lot of trouble and losing energy. So I decided there must be other ways to lead the company than do it top down.
So it was from your own personal development, your state of life at that moment, your own feeling of, well, this is not the right way. I want to live my life, my working life as a professional. That made you decide, okay, I have to find for another way.
I have to find other ways, and I went for it was a search. Yeah, it was a way of looking around what other ways are there.
Okay, well, that's something interesting to go into after Constant to share this story. Constant, I saw you just walking around because you were on a festival somewhere, having all these kind of school kids around. So it was a bit noisy, wasn't it?
Yes, it's a bit noisy. I have to give a presentation for not for school kids but for the teachers.
Oh, well,
so they are starting up again, seeing each other again after COVID, of course, and so they have a festival, and I can give a presentation. But that's for after 11 o'clock somewhere. And I'm still waiting for my midlife crisis. So still waiting for. But it's an interesting story, and I'm responsible now for HR processes within Rabobank, and before the HR department, I was responsible for the transformation of the customer service department. And I really like the model, but I also use models all the time. So we talked about values, and maybe for later I have a question to Jack. How do you, when you decide on a value together, how do you make it practical, and how do you make it real in practice? But maybe for later on. My case is about Vivat. It's an insurance company in the Netherlands. Real Zwitserleven are two of the labels, and I was responsible for the customer service department. And the company was bought by a Chinese insurance company. So the pressure took on, and well, the results were not that good. So there was a lot of pressure, and we talked a lot about it within the team. And of course, we had the benchmarks, and it was a regular customer service department with team leaders, with team managers, quite hierarchical. And we tried to change the culture and improve the results, and it didn't work out. So at a certain moment, I was fed up with the complete situation, and especially because in my opinion, the team leaders always talked about the agents, about the employees and their behaviors, and didn't do a lot of self-reflection on their part. And we tried to change that, and it didn't work out. So at a certain moment, I decided to completely change the structure of the team. And I gave a presentation about self-autonomous teams. And I let the team decide, are we going to work in this structure? And they said yes. So the consequence was we stopped with team leaders, and we stopped with team managers, and they became coaches without any decision-making tools anymore. They only had to support the teams, and the teams were responsible, had to decide themselves about hiring people, about the appraisals, the yearly appraisal round. They had to decide if they extended a contract, if a contract ended of an agent. And of course, we designed processes for the teams to how do you do it together. And all team leaders, that were coaches supporting this process. And we started working in this way. And it was really interesting because, of course, it didn't run quite smoothly in the beginning, because you have a lot of human processes. And if you make the turnaround from a hierarchical culture to self-autonomous culture, you have to learn how it works, and everybody has to look in the mirror. What does this? What do I need? What do the team need from my behavior? So it wasn't very smoothly in the beginning, but we learned in the process, and it was it's maybe the period in my life I worked the hardest, because we stopped with leading teams, and I had to work hardest to support the teams, and took the decision making into the teams. So the main thing I think we had to learn is how to practice dialogue within the teams. We weren't used to it. The agents weren't used to it, because they sat on the phone or on the chat helping customers every day, and now they had to practice dialogue. So we learned it. It took about 6 until 9 months, and then the results went up, and they went up structural, like 30-40% within every team, and it was amazing to see. And when I look back, it's very logical, and I'm using it now in every situation, every transition I'm responsible for. Because if people feel responsible and take the responsibility, you don't need, in the end, you don't need all the processes and the procedures and the policies. And of course, you have to support people with systems, IT systems, and some processes, but they can take the responsibility themselves, and that's quite good. So the efficiency went up, and the sales went up, and it was amazing to see. The engagement of the agents went up, and it became a totally different kind of culture structure also. And I think we never stopped learning after that. So that's great.
Cool. It's an interesting story, Constant. It is.
Yes.
Just before we dive into your stories, I got 2 questions from the audience. Oh, excuse me. They're both to Jack because of his presentation. The first one was asked by Ashley Telly. He said, how can you explain the happy cows give more milk metaphor? Isn't that completely offensive for workers or any people, as they feel like slaves serving capitalist production? Well, that's quite a challenging question. So thank you for sharing that. And you've been challenged on this one before, I guess, don't you, Jack?
Yeah, a lot, of course. Well, I remembered a presentation at the PwC, accountancy company, and I had this question also from the audience, and it's a bit critical, of course. But I asked this person, which stakeholders do you know in your company? And of course, he said, okay, yeah, we have shareholders, we have customers, we have employees, we have whatever government. I said, okay, and which stakeholder for you should be on number 1 if you do something? And then it, of course, became silent. And in the end, he said, I think I'll go for customers. That stakeholder should be on number 1 with everything you do. I said, okay, then we disagree. Then I disagree with you, because I think your employees should be on number 1 with everything you do. And that's my vision. If your employees, you put them on number one, and with everything you do, and you make sure your employees are happy and they are satisfied and they can fulfill their needs, then the rest will follow. Your customers will be happy, and in the end, of course, your stakeholders will be happy. And that's my vision. But of course, you don't have to agree with me. It's only my vision.
But so, it's always, with all due respect, you call your employees cows.
Yeah, that's because
but it's just with respect to your employees. Yeah, that's
yeah. That's because I was raised at the farm, and yeah. we had a lot of customers were actually farmers, so that's we made it a bit with humor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe if I can add, of course, you have to be careful with words, and maybe this is an example, but we are now talking about democratizing work, and in the end, everybody who's entering the building, and it's a virtual building most of the times, these times, you have to add value. And what I learned, if you whether you call it milk or add value, let's call it add value, it sounds better, I guess. I learned that if you add value, and whether it's measured or not, if you talk about it, what's your adding value to this company? It creates engagement because people want to add value. And here's the metaphor with milk. But I learned the main factor to create employee engagement is letting them add value.
Yeah.
And talk about it. So it's I guess it's very important. It's what I learned.
Yeah, well, true.
I agree.
There was another question. I will get back to it. First of all, there's a couple of things that resemble with me within your stories. Both your stories start from a starting point that is, I was fed up. It's both your stories. Is that a crucial point that actually makes you want to go to a more democratic kind of work environment, to create a more democratic kind of work environment? Being fed up, is that the only key that will help you? Because that's your stories. But you both come up with, well, I was fed up.
No, I don't think so. Okay, I think people move by two things. It can be pain or gain, and for me it was pain, I think, in that time. But you can also move or motivated by gain. Why not?
And what's your perspective on it, Constant?
Yeah, of course, it's always something which is changing in life, and there was on my part there was some. Of course, the pressure of the Chinese shareholder who wanted better results, and I wasn't able to do it in the context of that moment. But there also was this, let's call it, unsatisfying vibe within myself for many years. Also, on the years before that, I worked most of the time within corporate organizations. And there are a lot of people entering the building not feeling very happy. So I had this vibe, and I had this drive to find a better way of organizing work. And so that helped for me to try something new. And I think it was the combination of those two things.
Okay, cool. And the other thing that struck me from both your stories, Jack calls it being value-driven, having a dialogue about values. Constant, you were saying, well, it all starts with self-reflection, and it ends up with having dialogues as well. That seems to be kind of the same kind of movement, kind of approach. Am I right about it? That value, self-reflection, starting the right dialogues is crucial to becoming more democratic kind of organization. Is that true?
Yeah, maybe. I think we all go through a process in our lives, right? And well, Jack is calling it midlife crisis. Maybe in the end, I got one too.
Midlife change it was.
Yeah, and I hope that the cycle is becoming shorter for younger people. But I needed a lot of years to get rid of the value of status you have with for your job title or whatever, or your salary or whatever. I needed a lot of years to get rid of it, and this process helped, of course. And I think we all go through this process. How do you add value in life? What's your place in life? And for me, working in this totally different structure, where the autonomy was in the teams with people themselves, it was my understanding that's what I need to do within corporate organizations. So maybe it's also a midlife crisis, and it worked out fine for me.
Yeah. And how about you, Jack? How do you feel about it? What's your thought about
it? Yeah, for me it was always a way to innovate the company. So I was always looking for other ways to do it better or smarter or etc. And this combined with my complete loss of energy leading this company the other way, yeah, the result was this. And of course, it's about dialogues, and dialogues is something different than discussions, I think.
Okay, can you get into that a bit more deeper?
Yeah, with dialogues, you have an open dialogue. You respect the other's opinion without trying to convince the other person. And the discussion is more about convincing and trying to get your the people on your side. And with the dialogue, you don't do that.
But that was quite challenging, I guess, and I think for both of you, because you were all coming from a management background, leadership background, which is basically on the assumption that as a leader, you know the way to go forward and the rest will follow, just to put it in black and white. And so somehow you get yourself into a position where you say, well, I'm open to the dialogue and I'm not going to convince them, but I'm going to get them on board in a dialogue. So how does that work?
Yeah, I also recognize what my other speaker, Constant, told. Told about the transformation from managers to coach. I also recognize that because I also made this decision, not wanted to be a boss any longer, but wanted to be a coach for my people. And as a coach, you can more easily guide this dialogue than as a manager. You are always pushing and trying to manage everything. It's a complete other role, I think. So that's also a question for me to Constant. How did you do it? How did you transform these managers to coach? How could they create trust to be a coach?
Yeah, in the beginning, well, it's not just the transformation from manager to coach, because you still have the manager cap, but you. I also had to go through the process, not just being a manager, but also being a leader, also being a coach, also being an entrepreneur, and it's situational whether cap you put on at a certain moment. So we made it very practical at a certain moment, and I wrote down the behavior we wanted to see, and we did it together. So what do I do as a coach? Mm-hmm. What do I think as a coach? What's my mindset as a coach? We wrote it down. And the same for a manager. What do I do as a manager? What don't I do as a manager? What do I do as a leader? Well, I have to show my team where we are going, and what I expect of the people in the team. And I'm not responsible because you yourself are responsible. So we had a lot of session at my place, my home place, talking about our own behavior as former leaders, because we stopped being the hierarchical leader, but we were still leaders, and all the agents, of course, they were leaders themselves because they are responsible if they are helping a customer in a call, whether the call is taking 1 minute or 10 minutes or half an hour. they are responsible. And they are responsible that a customer is, when it's lying down its phone or pushing on the stop button, that the customer is satisfied, not just with the result, but also having a good feeling about the conversation, because you are the host of the company. So we talked about semantics in the beginning. We also stopped calling them agents, start calling them hosts, and turning around the pyramid. And well, it's hard working, because you have to start becoming more aware. Also for me, when I look back, I was so unconscious about processes that are happening within teams and within people. I didn't know, because I was not talking about it. I was not reflecting on my own behavior on that part. So
Okay.
it's a development. It's also personal development for yourself, I guess.
Did you also use values?
Yes, we did, but not that with that much focus as you told. That just happened.
Oh yeah.
That just happened. And we felt the connection within the team, and from the connection, values existed. Maybe they already were there, but people didn't dare to live them.
I got two questions, two remarks from Andreas from our audience. The first one is to Jack, and he's asking, what's the question again? From your point of view, Jack, is there any difference between organizational self-organization and organizational democracy?
Good question.
It's a challenging question. Good question.
Yeah, complete self-organization, I don't really believe in it, because you always need a leader or a coach or whatever. The same if you have a soccer team, you can put 11 top players on the field, but you're not going to win any game. Yeah, you need a coach, or you need somebody who creates this internal cohesion within the team and creates a vision or something.
Is that your experience or your belief system?
Both.
Okay, interesting. What's your experience on this?
Experience is that I tried to give this, let's say, tooling, or give this capabilities, or give this responsibilities to the team, but it didn't work out in the end.
What happened?
Well, there were no decisions taking. It became a bit of a chaos. Everybody was pointing to each other, so it didn't work out, at least at that time in my team. Maybe it can work out in another team, but at that time in my team, it didn't work out.
Do you recognize that, Constant?
Can I add? Well, I fully agree that it can happen. But you have to reflect on yourself as management, as consultancy company, whatever role you have in, because it's a process, and you have to, a team and employees need to mature. They have to understand what is needed. And I've seen it happen, that we didn't need the team coaches anymore. And of course you need staff and you need supporting roles for teams, but it's very possible to have a completely autonomous team. It's possible, it can work, but you have to rethink work.
Without a coach?
In the beginning, they need a coach.
Okay.
Because you have to grow up in the process. It's completely different than working in a hierarchical organization. You can't let a team from the one context and you please do your trick in a new context. It doesn't work like that. You have to accompany the team. You have to accompany the people. Human processes are going to happen within the team, because maybe a natural leader is standing up and is taking the old role, and you have to be careful with that, because it doesn't lead to an autonomous team. So you also have to coach the new natural leader to step back instead of talking all the time and taking the lead. So I think it's a process, and even if it's not true, I still want to believe in it, because it's the way forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I fully believe in it.
Yeah.
So and maybe back to the question. There's a difference, of course, with totally autonomous teams. I work with those teams within FIFA, and I work with democratized teams within Rabobank. They still have a team coach with hierarchical things in the role, responsibilities. But there also work with democratized teams, so they have a saying, and we have what we call in Dutch a klankbordgroep, a sounding board, and the sounding board has saying in decision making. So it's a different way of organizing, but the team is not completely autonomous.
Yeah. You recognize story, Jack? You recognize constant vision? And you recognize that it's a process you have to go through?
Yeah, it is a process, and I agree. At first, you need more coaching, and if the process is continuing, in the end, you need less coaching, and maybe in the end, you can do without a coach.
Yeah.
If the team is mature enough to take the decisions. I agree.
True. Yeah. Hey, one thing that strikes me from your stories, it's all about the change, and it's all about going from discussions, top-down management, to dialogues, self-reflection, and self-awareness, and value-based. And it's explicit or implicit value-based, but it's all about being very aware about your values, your core values as a team and as an individual. But doing that, specifically within traditional organizations, it may feel kind of vulnerable. So you need to have kind of a safe environment, safe setting, to be able to make that step, to have these dialogues and to have this vulnerability from the people you work with. So what's your experience with that? How do you establish that? How do you create that?
Results are, yeah. If you are improving with results, you have a context that is safe, is my experience. I worked with a Chinese stakeholder, and Chinese people are very hierarchical in their way of working. But if the results are good, you have the complete space to organize it the way you want.
But you have to
one at a time.
You have to show, you have to show results, and of course also it's not an easy answer, because in the beginning you don't have the results. You have to start somewhere. So you need to do some stakeholder management and organize the company that this is the way forward. And I'm very happy that in our context these days, for example, employee engagement is getting more and more important. So it is more easy these days than 10 years ago, I guess.
Okay, cool. Jack, you had something to add, I guess.
I wanted to ask the Constant, indeed, where did it start? Because result, of course, it's nice if you can show result, but it doesn't start there.
No. You always have to start with one of two persons in the top echelons of the organization. And unfortunately, it's still true. You have to start in the top. Otherwise, it's so hard to change. And maybe you can start in lower echelons more with just some areas, showing, creating a showcase, a use case, and then extend it like a oil dot kind of way. But the fastest way, if you have 1-2 persons in the top of the organization who embrace the idea of democratizing work.
It is needed.
Yeah. If anybody from the audience has any questions, please feel free to answer to ask them in the Q&A section of this session, and or in the chat if you want to. I saw that Andreas, he put some note on there that if you want to have some more information about dialogues versus discussion debate, he's referring to David Bohm. I've never heard of it, so that's an interesting thing to look at, and I will definitely do so. Yeah, true.
David?
David Bohm. It's in the chat section.
Okay.
Constant, when Jack finished his story, you said, okay, but how do you make it practical, his approach? So I guess that's still a valid question, isn't it?
Yeah. If you start from the value kind of way, so you decide on values together, and you have maybe 3, 4, 5, whatever. I've seen the same with Amazon. They have a value room with all the values on the wall.
I prefer one value.
Yeah, but then how to make it practical? How to live the value? Because it's just a word at that moment.
Yeah, I had a lot of experience with that, also in big companies now. And in my experience, what we do in big companies, we transform this value into mostly images or moving images, as in a movie. Very short movie which shows what you really mean with this value. And we always choose one value, so not 3 core values, but we deduct it to one value only. And an image shows more than 1,000 words, you can say, and it's actually true. So if you can create or pick really the best fitting image on this value, and then you can, it's much more easy to take people into behavior. That's the first step. And the second step, of course, is you can, we call them behavior rules. You can create behavior rules. You also did it, I heard. From within this value, we want to see these sorts of values, of this sort of behavior. And of course, it's not really a rule or law, but it's an example of behavior which we expect within this value. And this will be guidelines for people. Okay, so if I show this behavior, then I'm aligned with the value. That's the way to do it, I think.
So what do you do if people don't live the values after all these good interventions?
Yeah. That's what I told. Because of course there is a sort of gray area when it's still within the value, or when are you out of the value, this behavior. Of course, you have the dialogue about that. But if everybody agrees that a sort of behavior is not aligned with the value, then of course you have to take your responsibility and say, okay, yeah, this value of this behavior we don't want in this company, so this has consequences. And you can decide which consequences is that. It can even lead to ontslag. I mean,
resigning people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you have high trust and low tolerance. And if you don't do it, if you accept all kinds of behaviors within the value, then you have low trust and high tolerance. And that doesn't work.
Okay. But it's kind of a difficult way to go.
Yeah.
I guess with the consequence part. For example, I now work for a bank, and we think sustainable housing is very important.
Yeah.
But if I take my electrical car, I have one these days, and I make a round with all the employees. Not everybody is living in a sustainable house, having the solar panels on the house. But it doesn't feel the right way to put consequences on that part. You understand?
No, but by
so it's still I'm puzzling, because it's still a hard way to go. If we think it's important as a company, I have to start as a leader, of course. So I have to start with the electrical car and the solar panels on my roof. But how to create the oil spot? I'm still puzzling on that. It's talking now and showing and being the example, but it's not speeding up, in my opinion.
No, but your starting point was that you said, okay, this value sustainability for us now is important, and that's the starting point of dialogues with people. Why are you not putting solar panels on your house? Or maybe we can support you with it. And before you didn't have those dialogues, people, they didn't even know that you thought sustainability was important.
Sure.
So
and the other thing is, what does sustainability mean to you as a person?
Yeah, what's your definition? What do you want to do with it?
Yeah, true.
So these values, as I told, is a way of putting a next step in your dialogue.
True. I saw an interesting chat coming in from Andreas again, and I'm not sure. Maybe Samuel can do that. Maybe we can put Andrea on the screen as well, Andreas, because he said, there's something like a democracy that is based on the democratic values like freedom, equality, equity, solidarity. There's more political values in there, and there's not that many organizations that have these kind of. These are not the systems. Countries are democratic systems. Most organizations aren't, not in that sense, from these democratic values. The freedom, equity, equality, solidarity. How do you feel about that? So how does it feel right to talk about democracy within organization from that perspective?
Yeah, sure. I think it's very important.
Yeah, but do you think that the point Andreas is, I guess, he's trying to make, and he's just chatting. He can't join us in this conversation.
Yeah.
But he said, democracy only is a kind of is more or less a political system based on some democratic values, like from a societal perspective. While we are here discussing about these organizational perspectives and how does can we call it democratic, and in what way can we actually call it democratic? The way we talk about this from an organizational perspective. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, again, a very interesting one, because we're talking about semantics, and I'm never using the word democratizing work within the context of work. We always talk about how does it look like if you take responsibility? What does it mean to be accountable? And how do we organize the work around these concepts? Because in the end, we are a business, and we need to add value to our customers and to our employees. So we don't talk about this kind of words. We use other words.
Yeah, but still, the underlying values like freedom, equity, equality, solidarity. Yeah, they're quite the same, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. But also, for example, if you talk about a thing like mindfulness, which is quite interesting in the context of work, if you integrate it. A lot of people, if you use a word like mindfulness, a lot of people doesn't like the word. They doesn't accept, I'm not going to meditate. No, you don't need to meditate. But it's good, for example, to start a meeting with your feet on the floor and be quiet for 10 seconds and then start a meeting. Because if you get rid of the energy of your former meeting or the family situation you're just coming out of, you have more energy for that meeting. So it's also mindfulness. So, but we never use the word mindfulness.
No, that you're not starting your meeting with let's go in a 10 seconds meditation before we start this actual meeting.
No,
it's just make it
no,
practical.
we're not ready for that.
No, that's true. That's true. Jack, what's your perspective on it? What's your perspective on it? Democracy in organizations as a political concept, societal concept.
I agree with Constant that the words you choose, they are very important to create a common ground with people. So you have to meet the people where they are, and you have to choose your words and also images, as I told, carefully. But I also started my slides with a definition of a democratic workplace. So it's a democratic system of an organization that allows everyone to be treated equally and to be involved in making decisions. And that's the words you want to hear, I think.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's so true. I hope that's a good response to the chat, André. It was starting. And well, you just mentioned it. It's all about we're in a business. We're in a business environment, so we have to add value, and in the end, we have to make some kind of revenue in there.
That's not always the case.
Okay.
It depends on your values. Let's say if your main value is sustainability, why do you want to make profit? It's not needed. Maybe you don't make profit, but you create a sustainable world.
And that's what you decide on altogether as a process within the organization. But you're an entrepreneur. And how does that work for you?
Then you make a balance. Of course, you want to make profit as an entrepreneur, but not of all costs. So you make a balance. You say, okay, this value for me, employee happiness was more important than profit, for example.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Björn, I have to round up because I have to go to the main stage.
Yeah. Do you still have anything to add?
Yeah, maybe one more thing about making profit, because we talked a lot about this, and we decided if we make a lot of profit, we can use it to make impact on the sustainability part. So it's important, but we decided we need to make profit to create impact. So we made a connection between those two.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing your experience, Constant. It was a great pleasure to have you around here.
Thanks.
Enjoy your main stage with all the teachers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Should be quite a lot of energy, and we'll catch up later about the session.
Yeah. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Is there anything you would like to add to the story, Jack?
What I want to add is that I work at this company called Zero Entropy, and this word entropy, it can be a new word for most people, I think. But actually it means, entropy means loss of energy. And what I see around is that there are a lot of organizations, they don't function really well. There is no any way of democratize work. And that leads to loss of energy, and we call this loss of energy entropy, as I said. Mm-hmm. So our company is about zero entropy, and that means that you want to align everybody and to take decisions together which are supported by everybody. And we also measure the level of entropy within a company. And we make it very explicit in a percentage. Like we can measure in this organization, is company culture as, let's say, 20% entropy. And then we connect this to also to euros. So we say 20% of the total amount of salaries is actually wasted, or is actually not not useful for this organization. And why we do that? Because in this way we can also connect with the financials of the company, with the CFOs of the company. But mostly they say, we don't believe in democracy, we don't believe in company culture, it's only a waste of money, and they are much more into figures and facts. And in this way we can really make this connection, and we say, yeah, I know, but it also has consequences on your figures. Actually, it has this amount of money is not useful for this organization.
Okay, that's an interesting point. I can see Over joining us in our chat. Hi, welcome. Who are you? What do you want to add?
I'm I'm assistant professor in Campus Friesland, University of Groningen. I just want to add one point to this value profit question. So we are working with. So one of the problems that we are working with cooperative energy cooperatives, and one of the problems that we see is exactly that they're basic. They're not trying to necessarily optimize profit, but other things. And the problem is that the financial institutions, banks, etc., don't recognize that. They don't know how to deal with this.
No.
But a solution that we found in Australia, that was developed in Australia, and we're working with Monash University and Warwick together on this. They developed a framework to translate values into numbers.
Okay.
So it's called and it's especially catering for cooperatives and democratic institutions, sustainable institutions, whose objective is not to maximize profit. It's especially catered for democratic institutions. And what we would like to do together with the FSP, the Friesland Social Bureau, that we're working with as well, is to see if we can take the framework that we have there in Australia and translate it and adapt it to the requirements and the demands here in Friesland and in the Netherlands, in Europe in general.
Okay.
So if there's any interest from your side to learn more about that, then we're going to actually present tomorrow.
Okay.
But in any case, be happy to contact and think about that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Can you give a bit more explanation about that framework?
Yes.
What it is?
I can give you a link. Wait, let me just check.
You're putting it in the chat now, I guess.
Yeah. No. Oh, here it is. It's called. Okay. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, that's interesting.
Chat. So here you'll get all the information about this.
Yeah.
And there's the mutual value measurement framework.
Yeah.
And it's specifically for co-ops.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. And now that you're in our session, do you have any questions for Jack so far from his story?
Yeah. What do you think? Would you think that would be something that would be valuable here in the Netherlands or for cooperatives?
Yeah. I think I agree. It will be very valuable because there are mostly two sort of people in a company. I put it in black and white, of course. There are the financial guys and the people guys, and you have to connect those together.
Right.
Otherwise, it will not work.
Exactly.
And sustainability is something for the people guys and not for the financial guys mostly.
Right.
Also black and white, but I make the
absolutely. I think this is a problem that many cooperatives around the world are facing, and creating this bridge between the financial guys and the cooperative is the that's the essence of success of workplace
democracy. Yeah. I agree.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
That's what we're trying to do also, as I explained before.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
interesting. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Right.
Thanks a lot.
Well, I think it's about it for us right now. What do you think, Jack? We've shared a lot already, and I think we came across with Constant and of course also with the spontaneous interruption of Over. The democratizing work in practice is a lot about values, dialogues, reflection, and the process you're going through as an organization. That takes a little bit of time and it ultimately leads to better results. That's at least what I heard from Constant, and I guess it led to better results in your company as well, didn't it, Jack?
Yeah, that's also true. The results of my company were very good for a very long time. And also, I really felt it that people, our employees were very happy, and they told it to everybody that they were extremely happy within this company because they had so much freedom, and it was so clear what the values were. Everybody know what they should do and was doing. So results, yeah, they were also very good.
Okay, cool. If people want to reach out to you, Jack, because they were kind of inspired or curious about what the stories you shared, how can they reach you?
Yeah, they can send me an email or find me on LinkedIn, of course. I will share my email address here.
Yeah, okay.
So always welcome to answer questions.
Okay. So I didn't see any other questions coming in from our audience. So I think we're going to make a conclusion to this session. I think it was interesting. It was insightful. Just because although you started working from your small own company and are working with larger organizations right now, Constant, who's been working with larger corporate organizations all the time. But it's quite remarkable to see that these stories somehow, there's not that big a difference in the stories. Yeah? The way you started, because you were fed up, and you may call it a midlife crisis, or you may come to find out during the session that you were in a midlife crisis. The things, steps you had to go through, the process you had to go through, and you found yourself at the Richard Barrett kind of way to talk about values. And Constant did it more in a kind of evolutionary kind of way that they started talking about the values. It's interesting to see that these two stories, these two experiences, they make such a connection with each other. So that's a great and useful insight, I think, from what we have been discussing here today. So thank you again, Jack, for joining us with your story. Well, I thanked Constant already. I would like to thank everybody who has been watching us and listening to us for your time and patience, and hopefully we gave you some great insights. And well, maybe we get in touch later on. Thank you, and
thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.